Okay, today should be a pretty quick lecture. We're just going to talk about functions. I'm going to cover chapter 6 and I'm going to tell you what the difference is between the modules and functions and how we would use our functions in Python, and I'll show you a couple of examples. So these are the learning objectives that we have for today. So as I said, introduction to functions, writing our own functions, and what are library functions. Okay, so what is a function? A function, think of it as a module, and we already covered that. And you guys know that a module is just a little piece of code that does some action for you. And with functions, it's the same idea, but the difference is that our function can return a value back to us. So if a module will just do something for you, do some actions without returning anything back, a function will send a value back to you to use later in your program. And there's a lot of languages that provide libraries of functions, and what that is just a function that is built in to your language. So as yeah, and as I said, the function is just a module. Think of it the same way as a module, but it's just going to return a value to you. Now, library functions, they are just used for any common tasks that you might perform when you're coding. And what that means, for example, when you're using your print function in Python, right? We know that print is a function that displays something on our screen. That is a library function that is built into your language. You don't have to code it yourself, right? You just use the keyword print and it displays everything for you. We don't have to program the way it's going to be displayed, where it's going to be displayed. It's already built in, it's already done for you. Now, another function that is a library function is a random number generator. And all it does, it just gives you a random number from a range that you specify. And as you can see here, we have an example. We are creating a variable called number, and we are trying to get a random number from a range of 1 to 100. And it's just gonna give us what this will do for us. It's just gonna give us a random number from a range of 1 to 100, and it's gonna be stored in our variable called number. And why would we use that? Well, it's important for any game programs or any simulation programs. It's also very important in encryption. So whenever you want to encrypt some password, or if we want to make sure that your password is secure, we will probably use some kind of encryption that uses the random number generator function. And for any statistical program, so for any if you need to calculate the deviation of something, right? Like you will use a random number, and you would use a function, a library function called random number generator for it. Let's see. So the same idea, the way we write our modules, remember that we need a header and we need a body, but another thing that we add to it on top is going to be the return statement. So we will have to specify what we want to return whenever that function is done executing, right? So same idea, function header, the same way as you would define your module. So the definition, the name, it's the same thing. Then the function body, whatever you want to perform inside of that function. And the last piece of code that you will write in your function is going to be the return statement. And this is what it would look like. Let me show you an example. So we have here, we're declaring our local variables, obviously, integer first age, second age, and total. Then we would get, we would ask the user's age, and we would ask the user's best friend's age. So first age, second age right here. Then we would get the sum of both ages. And we have, as you can see here, we're declaring our, this is our function, sum, right? So it looks the same as a module. As you can see here, this is our header, function, integer, sum, and this is pseudocode. So this is not Python, this is not anything, so it might look a little bit different, but just the whole idea is the same. So function, integer, then our name of our function, then whatever parameters we have, number 1, number 2, remember, parameters, these are our arguments, and these are our parameters. And then we will declare, actually, one second. Resume. All right. Do you see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the writing your own functions. Okay.
All
right. So, and what this function will do for us is just we're gonna declare a local variable called result inside of that function, and then we will just set that variable to number one plus number two. Remember our parameters, number one, number two, and then this is the main difference. We're gonna return something. So as you can see, the keyword return, and whatever we want to return. We want to return the result. And what this will do, so in this function, we will calculate something, and then we're going to send a variable back. So this is all it's going to do. And as you can see here, we're setting a variable called total, and it's going to equal to whatever we return with that function. And it's going to equal to number one plus number two. So first age plus second age. All it's going to do for us. Yeah, so a couple of things to know. While we can pass as many arguments as we want, if you want to send 1,000, 10, 1, no matter the number is, you can do that. However, we can only return one value. So you have to remember that. If you want to return multiple, that's not going to be possible. You will have to write multiple functions for that. Now, yeah, the functions, they perform the same thing that the modules do for us. So they will simplify our code, they will increase the speed of your coding and your development of the program, and it's just gonna make your life easier whenever you work with multiple people. And you have to flowchart each function separately, obviously the same thing as with the modules. And yeah, the IPO chart, IPO, input processing and output, we can use it to show whatever a function does. So as you can see here, we have input, processing, and output, and we just put whatever. If we have input, we put what we input in. Processing is whatever our function does, so you just describe whatever you want that function to perform, and output is whatever we return. Now, we have some mathematical functions too. Those are all library functions, and they usually will accept, yeah, one or more values. It depends on the function that you're using, but it's the same idea as using your print function. So as you can see here, we have the square root function. So SQRT stands for square root, and you just input whatever number you want to have take a square root of. So for example, here we have take a square root of 16 and save it in our variable called result. And here we have our library function called power, and it's gonna just raise the value of your first number that you input to the power of the second number that you input. And as you can see here, they're taking a value of 4 and they're raising it to the power of 2. So that's going to give us 16. And this variable called area is going to equal 16. Here are some other mathematical functions. We have ABS that calculates the absolute value. We have cosine that returns the cosine of your argument. Round rounds to the nearest integer. Sine returns the sine, and tan returns the tangent of your argument. So pretty basic, your regular algebra functions. And whenever you want to use those, I would recommend you look into your language's library functions and see if they actually exist in your language that you're using, because some languages will have certain functions, some languages will not, some languages will have a different keyword for those functions, and so on. Just double check. So if you're running into any problems, for example, if you're writing your if you're completing your labs and you're running into some errors that you don't really understand, first of all, shoot me an email. Second of all, look at the spelling of all of your library functions that you're using. That's also very important. So we have also a couple of data type conversion functions. Remember our data types, we have a string, we have an integer, we have a real, we have float, we have we have a boolean, we have different data types that our variables can have. And if you want to convert one value to one data type to a different data type, you can definitely do that with library functions. And for example, one of the library functions that exist in most languages is called toInteger, and it's going to convert your real integer. And remember, real is just a number with a decimal point. And it's going to convert it to integer. So if, for example, if we have 17.6 and we want to convert it to integer, it's gonna just get rid of this one and it's gonna give you 17. So it doesn't round up. The important part, this one doesn't round up. This one does not. It just gets rid of your decimal. That's all it does. And toReal will convert your integer to a real. So for example, if we have 17 and you would use your toReal, it's going to convert it to 17.0. All it's going to do. Let's see. We have some formatting functions. Not all of the languages have this. Not most languages don't have this. But in case you see formatting functions, just so you're not afraid of it and not spooked by it. So yeah, we can have some currency functions, and it will just gonna format your number to a currency. So as we can see here, we have a variable called amount, and this is the number that we have, and then we want to display that variable amount, but with the currency format. This is all it's going to do. It's just going to display it with a sign, with a dollar sign at the front, and it's going to round up to the nearest to two numbers after the decimal. That's all it's going to do. Now, string functions. Remember, string, sequence of characters. So whenever we want to work with our strings, we can also use some library functions. We have length. Length will just return how many characters are in your string. Then append, it's just going to join two strings together. So all it's going to do, for example, if we have cat and we have a string called dog, and if we append those two, it's just going to do cat, dog. So it's just going to combine the two together. Then we have toUpper and toLower. All it does, if you use toUpper, it will convert your whole string to uppercase. And if we use toLower, it's going to convert your whole string to lowercase. And substring is a useful one. Substring will extract a portion of your string out of the whole string. So for example, if we have this one, cat, dog, and we want to substring just the first 3 characters, what we will have to do, we will call this library function substring, and we're just gonna specify that we want 3 characters, and it's gonna return cat to us. Contains, a couple more. Contains will identify if there are any similarities between the two strings. So it's very useful if you're looking, whenever you're searching for something, right? Anywhere, like if you're searching for through your emails and you're looking for a person's email, this is what it's going to do. Your computer will go through, like behind the scenes, your computer will go and run this library function contains on all of your emails and see which emails contain whatever you're looking for. Now, string to integer, string to real is just going to convert your string that stores a number to a number data type. So for example, if you're storing 14 as a string, you would use string to integer to convert it to integer. So you could use it in future calculations. And then isInteger and isReal would just test your numbers and see if you can convert it to a string. So for example, if you have the same, let's do 14, you will run a isInteger on this number, and it's just going to return you true, which means that you can convert it to a string. And the last thing, let me show you in Python. So whenever we work with Python, sometimes we have to import our library functions, because if we would be using all of our library functions, if they would all be pre-downloaded into our program every time we open it, that's going to take a lot of space, a lot of memory, and a lot of processing time. So that's why in most languages you have to import whatever library function you want to use. So as you can see here, whenever we want to work with random numbers in Python, we would import random, keyword random. And then what you would do number equals random. This is just this is a reserved keyword, so you just have to memorize it. Random, then you put your period, and then you put rand int, which stands for random integer, and then you put the range that you want your number to come from. So for here it's 1 through 100. And this function will just give you a random number from 1 to 100. And let me show you that real quick. Stop sharing, share screen. All right, let me show you this real quick. So as we can see, we're gonna import random. Then we're gonna store whatever, like the name does not matter. Let's say number equals, and then remember the keywords random, period, rand int. What range would you guys want me to put?
I don't know, 1 to 30?
Let's do 1 to 30, and then we just have to print our number. And let's try to run it. See, it will give us 28.
Mm-hmm.
And if we run it again, do you think we'll get the same number, or something different will happen?
Maybe something different?
Yeah, something different. So every time you would run this program, you will get a different number. Mm-hmm. See, 25, 21, 10, and so on. So this is all it does. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, so this is just how they would use it in a method. So as you can see, they're using a loop for count in range of 5, number equals random number for 1 to 100, and then they just print that number. So all it's gonna do is just print 5 random numbers for you. And this is how you would return a value using a function in Python. So as you can see, it looks absolutely the same. So our definition, the same as our modules. Definition, our sum, number 1, number 2, our colon, then result equals number 1 plus number 2, and then the keyword return and whatever you want to return. So in this case, we return result. This is the number that's going to be returned whenever you call this function called sum. All right, this is all I had for today.